you could get to that point to say, my customer is using this product through me. And by the way, that's the best way you learn, what are your product limitations, where it really sucks and where it's really painful. It will suck in a lot of places, but there are a couple of things that it should not suck before you put it on the market. The risk is that you say, if the customer is not ready to buy, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Actually, your role as a salesperson is to create awareness. They may not make connections. So you may see the issue, but they may not make connections. If you want your prospect to give you information, you need to create a bridge for that information to pass. And that bridge is...
One thing that I remember, I don't know if your parents did that, but my parents went to Turkey and bought jeans and sell them in Botoşani. So I grown in this culture of small deals, of being in the market. I sold vodka, cigars, different candies from Ukraine. I was like, that's the culture that I grew in. And I was a hustler, and my hobby now, even my wife is laughing, is selling stuff on OLX. Even now I have a battery that it's on OLX. I can't find it in the house, but people are still buying it and sending me messages, so I need to get that around. And we are in this culture, we have this understanding.
Yep.
What's the difference between this kind of sales that we are taught culturally and enterprise sales, where the things are really different?
Oh yeah. That's a long answer question, I would say.
We have 1 hour of podcast.
Let me start from what they have in common. They both, let's say, small sales and large enterprise sales, they have one very important thing in common, which we, in my view, you should never forget. People, you mentioned earlier, right? And for example, in what I do in my B2B sales process optimization services with my clients, I've created a framework which is called AFEF, which comes from ambitions, fears, expectations, and frustrations. And that's about people. And that's about connecting with people in front of you. So when you're selling something which is small or small value, you can rely more on impulse, human impulse, right? And it's not a huge amount of money maybe for that person. If they lose it or break it or whatever, nobody's gonna cut their heads. They're not gonna lose their jobs. If you're talking enterprise, we're talking, and for me, enterprise is, let's say, anything starting at $50,000, $100,000, millions of dollars a year. Contracts, these are typically deals that go above a threshold in the finance department or CFO, and they require several people approval, and you're removing, if I could say so, you're displacing a large amount of money for which some people may lose their heads if it's the wrong choice. Okay, so the implications of such deals are much larger than the implication for a small deal. So that's one of the big difference. The other big difference is when you're selling something small to maybe one individual, it's their own decision. I mean, they could say yes or no or whatever, right? When you're selling something large and complex, there are multiple people involved. And when there are multiple people involved, there was a saying that when you have two or more, three people, where you have three people, you start getting some politics, right? So, and this is when you get politics. Politics means influence, means, each one has their own AFEF, right? Their own ambitions, their own fears and expectations and frustrations. And you have to be aware of those things to be able to move the sale forward. And in many situations, it may not be just about the product or solution that you're selling. It is about how well you're connecting with multiple stakeholders in an enterprise account, and how well you understand their own perspectives in their roles, maybe even more than in the entire context of the company. So, I mean, the difference is really huge in between the two. What also, there is something that they have in common as well, the fact that it is best that in both situations, the client, the small one or the large one, they get themselves to the conclusion that they want to buy and they need to buy your solution. And that's the art of selling. It's not like you tell them why they should buy. They kind of get, after talking with you, having a conversation with you, they get to the conclusion that, oh, I think I should buy this. And that's, in my head, that's the ultimate selling methodology, if I could say so.
I was listening to you, and one of the things that I'm very passionate about, it's about behavior science. And I love behavior science, and I love a lot jobs to be done and Bob Moesta's work. And one of the things that I learned by studying it is the fact that sometimes the social role is more important than the functional role. And like, are you ready to show yourself together with that person or not? So are you proud of using that product or not? And one thing that I wanted to get into is how you understand this big ecosystem where you need to sell to many people, and it's a major sale, because most of the startups that I saw in Romania, they have this mentality of selling jeans, but they are going in companies. And I'm not saying it that just other people are doing it. I wasn't that person. And as I told you, I started to read spin selling and try to understand that in a major deal, there are more things you need to help those people take the decision. And I reference jobs to be done because one of the things that I truly understand is the fact that those people need to, like, you are offering, but they are buying. You're not selling. Yeah. Because you have the offer and in big sales, in big deals, the ability of selling, I don't know how it's working. Like in small sales, you can push, like, you have like, you can buy it now or someone else wants to buy it. It's kind of scarcity that is pushing the deal. But in corporate sales, scarcity is not working so well.
Agreed. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that I also discussed with my previous teams in my role as a leader in sales, and then within the Tech Sales Academy that I piloted a couple of months ago, and currently in my consulting jobs, is introducing the concept of victim, because everybody's talking about decision maker, influencer, all those roles that you find by default in HubSpot, let's say, or any other solution, right? But very few people talk about what I call victims. Victims are the people that are suffering from the lack of your solution, okay? So, or they're suffering because they have a solution which is not as good as yours. Let me give you an example.
I wanted that.
Excuse me?
I wanted that because it sounds very intriguing.
Yeah. Let's say, what are you selling? I'm
selling, like now I'm selling tools that it's creating client-facing content. Hyper-personalizing client-facing sales content.
Okay. So right now, because people don't have the solution in your client companies, right? Who is suffering the most?
As I understood, I believe that the buyers are receiving generic content from those salespeople, and they.
Okay. So that's one, and who else? That's interesting.
Like, I believe that salespeople who don't find the right content to create follow-ups very fast, and they are scavenging, say, SharePoint, Google Drive, Notion, whatever, to find something that is correlated with that buyer.
Yeah, and what do they have to do what your solution does? What do they have to go through in order to achieve whatever you're
chase other people to work on Canva because they don't have the Canva skills to personalize some documents. They need to spend a lot of hours, and they are suffering a lot because their boss or their VP of sales is looking at data and they are following up after 3-4 days when the people forgot about the demo that they already had.
Yeah. So that's what they have to go through. But I guess the real problem is that they're probably if people don't have a problem like sales, if they're not behind the targets, if like everything is going well, they're not going to listen to your solution at all, right? Why would they?
Pentru că e dat de gust, te întrerup să zic că Launchpod dă voce poveștilor de startup-uri românești cu un twist global. Podcastul este o inițiativă a Launch Romania powered by BCR cu sprijinul Google și în colaborare cu partenerul nostru fondator HowToWeb și partenerul nostru media startup.ro. Yeah. So you're saying like the victim, it's more of a buying trigger, like they have a pain, but it's...
Well, obviously, it's everything starts from the pain. But what I'm saying is, in this sales process, let's say, you may be selling to a sales leader, to a VP of sales or sales director.
Yes.
He may have the budget, or could be IT in certain large organizations, right? But the people that really suffer because they don't have this tool are the sales folks, right? Because they waste, I mean, the sales leader can come and say, hey, you're writing generic emails. That's why your open rates, your reply rates are so low. Well, there's no wonder your pipeline sucks at this time, right? I mean, how can you expect anybody to respond to your messages if you're doing this kind of stuff? Like nowadays, when everything is about automation, everybody's automating everything, right?
Yeah.
That's what the sales leader comes with. But then the folks, well, I have to spend way more time on personalizing my emails and my follow-ups, and I have to think of it, and I have 30 people that I need to do this for, and how can I remember all this kind of stuff? And it's like really hard, and they're going to end up doing what? 2, 3, maximum 5 contacts per day, right? That's what happens. And you come and say, hey, what would happen if you could do 30 contacts or 100 contacts per day, but keep the same level of personalization? Right, so that's your victim, the sales folks, and then there you have the decision maker. And what I see happening more and more in the enterprise sales are the sales executives that are, let's say, more successful are those that do a little more homework with the victims before going in and trying to approach the executives or the decision makers in a process, and that gives them like very specific context when they have the first conversations, and it shows that they did a lot of homework and extremely deep homework. So that's something that I see very rarely these days, because and you cannot do that for small value sales because it's a lot of time involved, right? But for larger deals, it makes the entire, like if you sign $100,000 deal, you can afford spending half a day or a day just researching with some victims and trying to get in contact with victims and try to do some homework before you go and approach something, let's say at a higher level. And that's I'm not sure what was the initial observation, but that was the key principle in the enterprise sales. This concept of having a victim and understanding what they suffer from. And then the second concept would be, what are the implications for that victim as well as for their, the superiors, yeah. So, and implications must be measurable. And I'm sure maybe you heard about MEDPIC or MEDIC, and that's one of the frameworks that is used for that kind of purpose. I used to call it like consequences. So what happens if those victims don't have a solution, and we already discussed in your situation that they do less approaches or non-personalized approaches, and they get lower response rate, lower pipeline, lower sales velocity, and so on and so forth. But at the same time, what are the consequences for the manager? Well, he has the team that is not producing. He's spending money and just, nowadays only 20% of the reps are really making their quotas. So it is a big issue because the quota is like you have 5 reps. Well, the quota is the sum of all the reps' quotas. So the consequences could be significant for the sales leader and then for the organization. And that's the different levels of consequences. And the consequences, to make sense for a customer to take action, they have to be measurable and big enough for them to take action. If that's not happening, it is going to be very, very hard for a sales rep to push anything forward. But that's the hardest conversation that a sales rep could have or could engage, because it's not that easy to have someone that you never met before to engage in such kind of implication to your spin model kind of questions or conversations. But
okay.
By the way, spin selling is a kind of an old methodology. I think
it is old, 88.
Yeah. So it's pretty old. There are new methodologies, as you probably heard of, challenger sale and
yes.
command the message and so others. But one of the things that I noticed recently, people don't have patience, and if you can do enough homework, and from your use cases and pain resolution stories, if you can start the conversation by kind of emphasizing, what could be in their world, and they say, oh yeah, that's what. If you have that in the meeting, in the first conversation, first you win trust. Second, you're definitely going to have a next step, and it's like they start being interested in you. They'll start asking questions. So that's let's say how things are changing these days, when people don't have any more patience for questions, to put it this way.
Yes, I can, it can relate, but I will make a summary of the process that you explained, because it's very useful, and I believe that the listeners will find value. Like in the beginning, you go to the user, like the user buyer, and understand their flaw and how they are suffering in that process. And then with those understandings, you go to the economical buyer and try to emphasize why he is not achieving his objectives. It depends on the department, because he has some victims, and they are the victims. Like, it was kind of funny when you said, because I started to think why they are victims, and I say they are victims of the system, because the system is flawed.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a way to call them. It is like, and by the way, it doesn't have to be. Sometimes victims are not. It could be direct victims, meaning, your solution helps them directly, but there are collateral victims. I don't know. Let me think of an example. So, let's say you sold a solution for marketing, because that's I don't have an idea now. Or this could be a first solution for marketing, by the way.
It's for RevOps. Like we found a lot of pull from RevOps, and it was quite interesting.
Okay.
So those are secondary or collateral victims.
So think about who else is suffering, because right now they have to do all this work, right? And it takes them a lot of time, a lot of research, sometimes accuracy, sometimes they don't find information, or they don't know how to do it, right? Because that's the other issue. So you have in the world of go-to-market, from what I know, I noticed two big issues. One, you have very senior people that don't have the engagement, or let's say they don't have the mood to do stuff, right? And you have the less senior people that they may want to do things, but they don't know how, right? And then how can you break the gap, right? So, or cover the gap. So that's the thing that you may be solving, in terms of like not just the direct victims, but the collateral victims issues.
Okay. I was thinking when you were talking about the fact that sometimes you need to look at how to, and this was like, now the product that I'm doing, it's at the third pivot. We started in a very different place. We pivoted, like we validated. And one of the things we didn't validate it was the sense of urgency. And I was like really curious how you can create urgency in an enterprise deal when, as a startup, you don't have 6 months to wait for an answer, and it's probably you're gonna go bankrupt if there are 6 months. So how do you create that sense of urgency, but not urgency as in buy now, 30% discount or stuff like that, but how you do that?
So I'll just share with you something that I observed myself. One is, if you have the ability to link what you're doing to some of their internal initiatives, that is really on their agenda these days, and that's something that you could do, or you should be doing in the first meeting or first meetings, right? Then this is what may create a sense of urgency. Because if they have priorities right now that they don't link those priorities to whatever you're doing. But if you make that connection for them, then you're inheriting kind of the sense of urgency from that priority. So that's one thing. The second thing is, in enterprises, you're not really always capable of hurrying things up, right? They just operate the way they operate. And if you make the decision to go enterprise, then you have to prepare for that. And you probably heard of, like the buyer journey clock, right? And every buyer is in different stages of their evaluation of solution. So they bought a solution already, they start using it, and they start getting some dissatisfaction. Then they start looking at the market. Okay, how the hell can we fix this? And then they invite some vendors and RFP process and so on. So that's the buyer. And then sometimes you cannot really change that. And the only thing you need to do is have yourself be in a clock where you're talking with enough companies to see where they are in their buying cycle. And that's why I don't agree with those sales gurus that says sales is just art and just about people. And no, it's also discipline, it's effort. I think it's a balance, right? So it's methodology, it's CRM as well. I don't think if you're serious about doing sales, I don't think you can do it without a CRM. After a certain point, obviously for 310 customers, you can do it, but still, and it's a pity these days with all the tools that exist not to use them. So those are the two things, right? So one is have enough attempts and see where each of your prospects are in their buying cycle. Second is try to find out their priorities and connect your solution to their priorities. And in order to do so, obviously you have to do what I call the 3 C's. Connect first with a human. And that's, you need to connect with that human. They must kind of, like you a little bit, right? And then you must have the context that they can relate to. So, actually it's their context that you connect to, right? So the second C, and the third C is qualify, but actually that's the Romanian C, it's a Q. In this situation, the qualify means one trick that I tried, and it's working very nicely for me at least, is to disqualify the prospect. So try to disqualify the prospect instead of qualifying it. In a way, like kind of give them any reason why they would not buy anything from you or have a conversation with you. And what happens is typically they may come back and say, no, actually it's not that, maybe we should consider this. So it kind of works, but it must be a very informal conversation where you connect it first. And I say connected because the connection makes the bridge. So if you want your prospect to give you information, you need to create a bridge for that information to pass. And that bridge is the trust bridge. And the trust bridge is you create that by, either somebody introduced you, or you're a super guru in your industry. Everybody knows you and they're like, oh, let's hear what this guy has to say, right? Or you're asking a super smart question. You're asking thing that the customer had never thought about. Or you're doing a super great homework. Like I said before, you're reading, about them, you're connecting with people around them, you're finding out specifically where they are, and you can show them. You can even show off, literally say, talk for 10 minutes about them, and I don't think that's going to be a problem because that really shows that you're genuinely, interested in them, and actually that's how you should be. Genuinely interested to solve their problem. And disqualify means if these guys don't have a problem, I'm not going to waste their time nor my time. And that's the last thing.
Okay. Listening to you, it gave me, like, I don't know, my brain, it's like going in different directions, because there are many things that I want to discuss with you. Because in this part of sales, and probably I got into the discussion very steep, but I wanted to pick your brain on the fact that for most of the startups, when they, for sure, as we discussed, we need to change the mindset from small deals to bigger deals, going from product-led growth to sales-led growth, when you need to, in the beginning, the founder is the first person to sell. I wanted to get more into the fact that how you get your first 5 customers to pay, even though your product is not pixel perfect. Because here in Balkans, we have this perfectionist mindset that even when the product is ready, we don't feel that it's worth money, even though people from outside, they are ready to use it.
Yeah. So I cannot say, I haven't started too many startups. I've been in one. I had the luck to be in one. I'm currently working on my own startup, and I'm kind of, whatever I'm telling you is something that what I'm doing right now. So I think that any founder that recently started a company is that because they've seen a problem, or they're expert in a field, and in spending 10, 15 years, 20 years in that field, they notice a gap that nobody or somebody is solving that problem but not that good, right?
They saw the victims.
They've been the victims probably, right?
Oh,
or they were
yeah,
the
better.
And they're like,
yes.
Oh my God, if there was something that would solve this issue, oh my God, I'm sure it's going to work, right? So that gives you a lot of expertise, and that gives you those stories as a founder. That's why the founders, by the way, it's very hard for a new sales rep that joins the company of a founder to sell as good as the founder, because they don't have that background, that context, that those real true pains that the founder has felt, right? You go and sell your expertise, and that's the way I do it, right? So you can start with the consulting, and then this is the best way to validate that you're not in your bubble. And that's where you start having maybe your product. You don't have to sell your product up front, but you can sell expertise first and then back it up with your product, right? Many people, what they do is that they start working on a product and say, hey, we're going to have this ready, we're going to start selling it. What I'm saying is, what if work on the product, but start selling expertise first, as in the meantime, guess what? You're going to have maybe 5-10 clients at the end of your MVP right on, right? Plus the learning you're getting. So my own experience and my advice based on my own experience is start from selling your expertise as a consultancy, right? Which is, and has the product, your product will productize practically whatever you're selling as a service, in other words, right? So that's my observation. I'm not sure if you can do that for any kind of product. For the B2C products, it's probably harder. But I'm talking, again, just B2B segment.
Okay. And probably you will get to those 3 clients and you start to deliver services. And the next question that goes through my mind is what you do when you have to deliver that service through the product and it's not working, but you need the money. Like most of the time, like even in lean startup, in the running lean of Ash Mauria, he is telling like sell with the PDF, do the assessment, and after you do the assessment, you will build the product, so you will get some money from some people in the market. But at the same time, from my experience, I got the question, I want to test the product before.
Yeah, again, I think the companies that I have in mind and whatever I do right now is really companies that have been selling to mid-market or scale-ups or enterprise businesses. And I think the successful companies that I know, and I had a little experience in Seedlink vetting startups that were coming to get funding. So some of the most successful companies that had like a stable and healthy trajectory were those that started the way I just told you. So they kind of started from servicing companies and then building the product along the way, and then introducing the product step by step to the client. And then guess what? At the end of a couple of years, maybe they could say, you know, this, because you have a relationship, right? If you do a great job, and typically they do, you have a relationship, and they allow you to say, hey, you can say, maybe we're not using your product 100%, but you know, we're using it. And even if you are the user of the product, but using the product on behalf of your customer, you know, you could get to that point to say, my customer is using this product through me. And by the way, that's the best way you learn, you know, what are your product limitations, right? You know, where it really sucks and where it's really painful. It will suck in a lot of places, but there are a couple of things that it should not suck before you put it on the market. And you will learn that by doing, like staying in the shoes of your customers. And I think probably doing this for 2 years, I guess, again, that's my experience. I've seen others doing it for way longer time. But that's what I've seen. It depends what you're doing. There are the Silicon Valley model where, you know, you get money with a deck, and then you start building it with, you know, just hired 40 developers, whatever, and 60 reps. And then you go, you know, make it or break it. I'm talking about what I know because, you know, I don't want to talk about things that I've never experienced, and you know, they sound extremely nice for me from the news, from the books, from everything, but I'm just sharing whatever I'm dealing with.
I totally appreciate that, and I find it very valuable. I would like to, if you can share, what it would be a healthy way of selling as a founder of a startup, because most of the time, like, I'm going back to the jeans example, you try to close it from the first meeting. And as you said, in big enterprise, it's more of a relationship. But at the same time, in my experience, I got demos, and at the end of the demo, I was expecting for them to say, yeah, we want to start a pilot. And they don't.
Yeah.
How you soft land into an organization? Because for sure I did a lot of mistakes. I learned a lot in the last 6 months. But how should someone start? Like, if you can help me with some steps that someone would use in this.
So, one, I think introductions. And going through introductions is the quickest way to land conversation. So your first goal shouldn't be to sell or demo, but to land a conversation. And in that conversation, you know, the first thing is to establish trust, as I said, as a knowledgeable resource for the potential individual in front. And I'm saying individual because if you're talking enterprise, you're not meeting a company, you're meeting an individual within a little country, right? And that individual has their own, you know, like I said, AF, right? Have their own stuff, ambitions, and they may want to succeed. They may want to, you know, they're frustrated with some guy at the development they asked for a feature for 6 months and it was promised 2 years ago and so on. And then you find out about that and it's like, but if could somebody do this for you? Could you get a budget to solve it? And then, you know, they connect, they may say, but is that possible? So number one, introduction. Number two, try to get a conversation where you find out their personal ambitions and expectations and fears and frustrations, where you could share also stories that they could say, oh, yeah, that happens to me too, right? Instead of, by the way, that's another tip or trick, if you will. A lot of the founders talk about their solution in terms of what it does or what features it has, right? It's a very well-known issue. So if you ask, what does their product do? And I say, like, oh, we have, you know, you can send emails at every 2 hours, personalized by 100 parameters, and we have cloud servers around the world, and we have DDoS attack protection and all that kind of stuff, right? Instead of saying, like, we work with this client, or I've been working with this client in a consultancy, and they were in this situation. They couldn't send emails on a regular basis, and because of that, they kind of lost some customers in Asia, and they had some attacks in Asia on their server, and I said, oh yeah, we have that too. So it's like stand-up comedy, right? You're kind of saying a story that they can relate to. And create in their head the thinking that, are you suggesting that you have that kind of solution or what, right? That create that kind of teasing or curiosity instead of just explaining. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind the type of personality you have in front of you. Sometimes, there are some folks that are very like top executive. They want short, the short, do not read. How is that, right? Just give me the short version, right? Just tell me.
Yeah, one pager, bye.
And even in these situations, you would just try to say what you do in a very short format, but always link whatever you do with their role, typical issues, right? So if you're in the marketing, I said, we're having this, whatever, marketing automation solution, okay, kind of said what you do, that is solving the brand visibility into the difficult markets, or is best for people that are trying to penetrate a certain market in a certain niche. So in a way, they kind of, so that they can map it a bit with whatever they're trying to do. That's
okay.
Like mapping is, your intention is to map a little bit. It's a little guesswork, right? Whatever they have on their agenda with whatever you do.
Okay. Now I was like thinking like the biggest challenge of every VP of sales is to hit their quarterly goal, as we discussed previously.
Yes, but what do you think why do you think they're not hitting the quota?
There are so many reasons.
Like what? Give me top 5.
Let's start from their people don't follow up clients. Like they get the leads and they're like scrambling with other leads. They are not qualifying leads. They are like don't doing the discovery, like creating the relationship, as you said previously, like having that intro. Then they don't like the medic that it's qualifying and it's helping them. Then you have the materials that are like not specific for the client's context. Yeah. I can go on and on. Like in the last 6 months, I talked with so many VP of sales, and one thing that we did, and it was an awesome experience, is to do synthetic user interviews. I don't know if you tested that, no. But it's something like you prompt the GPT to embody a specific role, and you start to have user interviews with him, like discovery calls.
Yeah.
And there is this platform called Synthetic Users, and we had the opportunity to talk with consultants for customer centricity from US that is partnered with that platform, and he gave us some interviews, and it was quite impressive because it had that level of storytelling that it's giving you like, yeah, the VP of sales puts his head on his hand and says, oh my God, I'm so frustrated with these people who don't want to read anything and they are just proud of their achievements.
Yeah,
like,
yeah, exactly that. Yeah.
And it was like, that's AI, but at the same time, it's a feeling of someone real. And this is how we learned, and we try to bypass take the fastest route to there to understand better the clients that we are working on. So that's how we got to that. So you get to those people's needs and problems and so on, but at the same time, how you go and do the discovery without doing the sales, because most of the people, when you do cold outreach, they feel that you want to sell to them. And sometimes you just need to have a personal discussion with someone that it has like 30 minutes. I will take 30 minutes from your life. I don't want to sell you anything, even though people feel that you need to sell something.
You're absolutely right if you're contacting someone without a context. or without thinking about what could trigger their attention. And for example, in my situation, something that I tried before, and I think it may still work these days, and I tried it as a sales rep, by the way, was to use my competitors' names, right? Because I studied and I learned what were my competitor weaknesses. You know, I used to work, I've seen that we used to sell the subscription billing platform, and we had a competitor that had a lot of weaknesses. They had a super strong platform, with the market leader, but because it was such a big platform, they forgot to sell it continuously to their existing base. So in other words, we were offering the exact same functionality that platform was offering, but our competitor was not reminding or educating their customers that they have that functionality, or it was so complex to set up that the customer just gave up, right? So we were not really different from that perspective. And in many situations, having conversation with multiple prospects, you learn that customers don't know about things, about, you know, what the competitor's capabilities are really, or they learn about, you learn about their competitors' weaknesses. And one thing that I'm teaching a lot of junior sales reps is the 3 magic questions. I'm not sure if you heard about that. The questions are like this. So first of all, like, hey, I see that you work with these guys for this kind of issue. What is it that you like so much about them right now? And you know, no matter what would happen, no matter if you had to change to a different platform, whatever, you would want to have, no matter what. So that's question number 1, which is very positive. It's not like you're not bad-mouthing the competitor, right? And the second thing you're asking is, and they tell you, and what's funny is that in many situations they tell you what they don't like, even though you're asking what they like. I mean, try it out and you'll see what happens. The second thing is you're asking about, okay, what is it that you have today with this competitor? But it's not working great. Like it's so and so. It's not. I mean, it's there. You have it, but you know it could be better. And you know, this is when they develop again what they told you in the previous answer, right? And the last one is, and this is very nice because I think it puts them in a dreaming spot. What is it that you don't have today, but you always wanted to have, and you always dreamed to have, right? And these 3 questions gives you very quickly some of the decision criteria of your prospect, right? What is important for them? And this is for even for small sales, but for larger sales, if you're asking the same question to different people, you may find out different things, right? Because they see, you know, some people deal way more with the support of your competitor vendor, right? Some people deal with the functionality, some people deal with the payments or invoices, whatever. And you get the full picture if you're asking these 3 questions to different people in different roles. So that's one non-intrusive way to have a conversation with someone about, I've seen that you guys are doing this in this market, and I've seen that you're working with that vendor. If you can see that, by the way, I like to learn more about that and what is that you like about them, and so on. So that's one simple way in the conversation. But the key thing here is the context. So the context means something happened, some news, some post, some comment. Unless you have a fabricated thing where you're saying, I see that you work with this competitor, and I know they have these issues A, B, and C, and D. Not sure if you have them. If you do, if you want to talk, let's do it. So that's the other option.
Okay, sounds interesting, because one of the things that I'm currently doing is trying to engage with strangers, like VP of sales from LinkedIn, and sometimes in the beginning I did a blob of text, and I figured out that the blob of text works only on email, and now I'm trying to be a more personal, hey, how are you now doing sales enablement? How are you tailoring the content, and so on. So some people answer, some people ignore it, and it's fine, but the open rate is higher. So that's so I can relate with what you're saying.
One of the, I'm not sure if you have because we are living in a content is king strategy, I guess, right? And a lot of people are making content these days, and but I've seen very few companies that have how should I say, a content strategy, like a content pipeline with valuable information, curated information for their target roles. One thing that a sales rep was doing to me, somebody from a different company was trying to do to me, and I really liked it, and I was appreciating it. They were sending me all kind of reports about sales metrics and benchmarks, and I kind of, I liked it. Personally, I liked it because it was sparing me from researching, and it felt like I set up my own Google alert thing that is sending me all these reports. And some of the reports, I think they were kind of paying, I think Forrester or something. I'm not sure if a startup can do that, but there's still a lot of material available for free on the internet these days. But having that kind of information for me was good. So in a kind of, what I'm trying to say is having content that could be useful for the role that you're targeting, for nurturing purposes. That's the one other option, right? But like I said, the sensitive topic has always been competitors, in terms of what they do, what they operate, and so on and so forth.
Nice. And this, I will test that, and I will come back to you with these kind of things. Like one of the things that I read last night, and it's my Achilles heel, is the cold outreach part, where I have my, fear of rejection, this kind of stuff that I need to overcome. And I try to read, before starting, I read a lot of stuff. Like I read a lot of books and stuff just to get myself prepared mentally for that moment when someone will ghost my message. So one thing that I learned, and here it's a question that if you can get more into, is how you can win trust very fast. Because one of the things that I understood in cold outreach is to create relatability as soon as possible. And you mentioned some of it through the interview. Even this with the competitor, it creates relatability because you're asking about someone who is like in their field of view. And even in a book, I don't remember which one, it was a statement that when you're doing cold outreach, don't try to sound like a salesperson. Hi, I'm Mircea from something, and try to be more relaxed and open, and as the message comes from a friend, not someone who is like in the first introduction. But what are the methods or ways of getting trust quite fast in the cold outreach part?
So again, in a way, I'm not... they're saying that cold outreach, you should not do cold outreach. Let me explain. That means you should warm up the prospect a little bit. And some of the warming up little techniques or tactics are starting from viewing their LinkedIn profile, commenting on whatever they said, liking, or I have clients that do amazing stuff. They send kind of some sort of gift boxes that are professional, but they're like very well in a world where I'm talking like GPT now, right? In a world where everybody's automating email messages, right? Doing such an how should I say, extra mile, right, is amazing. And there is about cold calling as well. There are like a split world. Some people say, hey, cold calling doesn't work anymore. Nobody wants to be cold call. Others say, yeah, you say that because you know how to do it. And you know what? I've seen people doing it very well. And I've seen, I've been in a workshop with one of my clients, and I've got one of the reps who was very courageous, just took the phone, made a call. She was extremely nice and likable, and it went well. So what I'm trying to say is there are ways to do it, but it doesn't have to be cold. So you could warm it up somehow. You could warm it up with marketing. I'm not sure if startups with 1 or 2, 3 people can do it that way, but that's a warming. And then if you do cold, the alternative would be, like I said initially, instead of doing cold, do a little extra effort in terms of trying to see if you can have a connection through an introduction. This is my view, and this is my approach of things. I'm more for precision and quality than quantity. Okay, so again, that maybe others would say, you're wasting your time, better do this and that. I'd rather look in my phone and see if I could find a way through and connect to that person through somebody than just trying outreach immediately. One of the funniest thing I've noticed in my consulting work so far for those people who are trying to do outreach was that they're always looking to get new contacts, new companies, ICP companies, and they never look at their own database. Yes. That they kind of had there, or they're not looking at their own network, or they're not looking at their close friends network or their investors network. And I said, why are you looking so far when you can look much closer? And that's, for me, that's a dilemma. I don't know, to answer your cold outreach, that's how I would do it, because if you're coming from someone, you kind of inherit a little bit of trust. Obviously, if you work with somebody in their industry, that should tell something. And if you have some results in that industry, actually, results or stories, like I said. So in your first email, you could have like 1 or 2 hypotheses in terms of, I've seen it here in this industry, like some other companies that I know. And if you're here, probably dealing with this kind of situation. These days, HR companies, are dealing with a lot of churn and lack of loyalty from the employees and blah, 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 blah. So if that's your situation and it's on a priority on your agenda, I suggest a coffee anywhere in the next 2 weeks or so. Something that is not pressuring, right? So that's what I would kind of suggest. Unfortunately, these days, because of the AI and the automation that's happening, I wouldn't bet my life on anything because things are changing so fast. And, whatever worked last year may not work this year because things are evolving so fast.
I heard a lot of rumor about cold calls. Like a lot of people are betting now on cold calls because it's the new thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the old thing, but it's coming back.
Yeah, because that's true. Very few people do it or know how to do it. And it's refreshing. Even LinkedIn, it's full of, AI posts and it's becoming invaluable because of that. People don't look at the posts anymore.
Going to the end of the podcast, I would like to pick your brain through 3 last questions. First, which is the 3 books that are mandatory to be read by founders who are starting to sell?
The question is to sell what?
To sell to B2B enterprise, to sell to companies more than 200 people where you have a buying committee, not a me committee.
I discovered extremely nice books from Jeff Toole. He has several books on complex sales. I think one is called Master the Complex Sales. And the other one is called, if I remember correctly, Prime Selling. But just look at the author. It's pretty cool. I like the fact that the guy was really putting some concepts into buckets for me. You know what they say, that you like a book when you find yourself in it, right? And you kind of, or Kiyosaki was saying, you're smart if you agree with me, right? Yeah.
Good.
So yeah, these are some of the things. One of the other books I would highly recommend, maybe for Romanian sellers, is Escaping the Price-Driven Sale. That's a follow-up book to the Spin Selling, by the way. But this is where I've learned about a new way of selling. For the first time in my life, I've seen the concept of the sales guy is not a sales guy, he's a broker of strength. So he's acting as a facilitator in terms of, connecting the customer with other things, even if they're not related to his own product, right? So I'm going to help you with other things. I don't know, you have an issue with your telco, whatever, because I know somebody there. It doesn't help me with the business related directly, but I'm going to help you. So that's that. And then I think one of the things that I've learned from those books that I just mentioned was the fact that the role of the sales guy in the Jeff Tool books is to be a facilitator, more like a coach, meaning you're practically co-creating the solution with the client. The concept occurs a bit in the MedPick book as well. Instead of coming up and say, I have a solution. And that's one thing. And the other great point from that book, and I'm going to stop here with that, it's about self-diagnosis. So if you go to the doctor and say, hey doctor, my head hurts, can you give me a head pill? And the doctor says, yeah, sure, take it. And that's a malpractice, right? If the doctor would say that. So instead, you as a sales guy said, okay, let's see if it's a head issue, if it's a stomach issue that goes to your head, or if it's something else, right? And requests, you as a sales guy, you ask for the right to ask questions and investigate and make a diagnosis. And that for me was like, yeah, that makes sense. I mean, sometimes you need an anchor, you need a good reason to say, why do I have the right to ask questions in a conversation with a customer? Especially when they want something from you and said, I know what I want, just give me what I want, and cut the price in half. So
always the last one, it's cut the price in half.
Yeah. So that's what I would recommend. Sorry for the long answer.
No, it's very good, because one of the things that, as I told in the beginning, I was a hustler, but I hated to sell. So that's why OLX helped me a lot to not have the interaction, and I negotiate on the chat, and then we meet and I give you the product or send it by fan courier. Yeah. But reading Demand Side Sales from Bob Moesta was probably one of the most eye-opening books about sales for me. Like, I read it 3 times, but more for the jobs to be done part. And he's saying, like, people are not buying products. They are hiring them to make progress in a struggling moment.
Yes.
And it was very eye-opening for me, because it's not my job to force it. They will buy it when they will be ready.
There is a risk with that mentality. The risk is, especially in Romania, I made a post about it, where we have the Maioritic, mentality. Like, if it has to be like this, then let it be. So the risk is that you say, if the customer is not ready to buy, okay, I'm not going to do anything. Actually, your role as a salesperson is to create awareness, right? They may not make connections. So you may see the issue, but they may not make connections. It's coming back to the doctor example. They may have a pain, a small pain, and they say, like, yeah, it's fine. But then you as a doctor say, hey, that's not okay to have that small pain, because in 5 years from now, you probably have, what if you have a cancer, right? So your role as a salesperson, as an expert in your area, is to create some awareness, if that exists. Well, if that awareness is not linked, again, to their agenda and priorities, that's fine. You come back when their agenda and priorities will be linked to that awareness. But if it's not linked, there's nothing you can do. And this is where you kind of give up and move on.
Can I challenge you in this? And it's a question that I'm still searching for an answer. And it's a sales thing. In life, we have priorities. And it was very nice that you said that we are, as salespeople, we need to help them make aware of the problems. And most of the time, where I heard, everything is important. Like, the sales content is important, the training is important. What you sell, you can put it in the ranking and you can press the pane, as he will say, everything is important. Mm-hmm. How you have that, you need to fit your quota to have money to survive, to pay your bills and everything, but at the same time, you need to be aware, like, I don't know, I hate those people who are coming in your house and are, I don't know, the vacuum cleaner that are coming into your house for $3,000 and they are selling it, and they do all the sales tricks you find in every sales book for closing. And I hate them. And I saw people on OLX selling that vacuum cleaner for €2,000 instead of 3,000 because they made a loan from the bank to get it, and it was madness.
Okay.
How you not get there? Like, how you adjust that? From some people, it's not that important.
So, first of all, your example with the, I don't know, with the
vacuum cleaner
is in the consumer business, but coming back to this, it's about the human factor here, right? So my only conclusion or observation so far in my life is I believe that people are interested in their own issues, in their own business. And I think as long as the conversation goes around something that is about them, right? I think their level of interest will be there and it will grow. The big challenges for the salespeople is, okay, I've never spoke with this person before, right? How will I know what is their level of what their interest is? And this is where I think the preparation comes. My answer to your question is preparation for that first conversation. And preparation means understanding the role that you're selling to, what they go through, right? Other thing that I've noticed in working with startups, they get lots of startups, they get a bunch of customers initially, but then they don't talk to them to learn more about how to sell to the next, group of customers, the next cohort, let's say. Okay, so preparation about what is important for them, for that role, for that person, and maybe for that company in that stage of their life. And then preparation means about researching. So the biggest issue, if I could point a couple of big issues in sales today, is the lack of preparation. And the lack of preparation for the first meeting, or for a first approach, right? So I've seen a company that was sending hundreds of emails, and they were like, no preparation whatsoever. And they were selling to they were hoping to sell, to big,
good one,
to big companies, right? And I was like, why are you not investing a bit more? Because your contract starts at $30K. I think they're worth a little bit more than just, being an analyst and knowing their name and just their title and just mentioning your use cases, your case studies. I mean, it's good to have the case studies, but if it's not about them, if that message is not about them or their context, these days very hard. It's very hard.
So it's more into their responsibility to understand the level, and you can make them aware as possible, because in the questions that you put, like in the implication questions, because those are pointing to the pain points. In the implication questions, they decide if they care or not about those implications. And it's more in the responsibility of the organization.
I'm not sure I understand the question, but...
It's like, in sales, one thing that I understood is the fact that you can create more urgency and create awareness of the problem. And if they don't fix the problem, you can say, if you're not fixing this problem, you will not fit your objectives. If you're not fixing this problem, and we both sell different products, and we can say to the same client, this is the problem, and if you're not fixing it, you will not hit your quota. And he will have to take a decision to buy which subscription he will have. And in this calibration, how much you should press the pain points to make him aware, or he will take the decision.
First of all, I'm not. Maybe it's a conversation issue.
No worries.
I wouldn't tell them this is your issue, and if you don't solve it, you're going to get this issue or this result or this impact. I would not tell them. As I said before, the art would be that they say that, right? I mean, they have to realize that instead of me saying it. My job would be to tell stories and or ask questions that would make them realize that.
Okay. Now I get what you're saying.
If I tell them directly, I may insult them, right? And you don't want to do that, especially in the enterprise where the egos are very high. You don't want to do that. And then the other thing is that I've noticed also while working with sales reps was that, you know, I teach them concepts like the one that I just told you, and then they apply it. The way you formulate the question could lead to make that person, especially in the enterprise, feel threatened or feel like, hey, do you think I'm stupid here? I've been doing this job for 20 years and you come and tell me, you a sales guy, what's this, right? So what you always want to do is in the conversation assume that they're doing things right and expect that they'll contradict you. And you know what? If there is an issue, they'll contradict you. They'll tell you. That's my experience.
Okay. Very nice reframing, and thank you very much. In my head, it was like, most of the time I see that I look into websites that they have the value proposition above the fold, and it's saying like, hit your quotas, hit that, do that through us. So if you're buying that product, you're accepting that it's not there. So that's why I thought probably it's to create that awareness.
Wait. So let's not put those things together, because what you're seeing on a website and then people go and buy, it's probably a B to small b, or like a subscription that people buy for $50 a month or $200 a month, right?
Okay.
We're not talking about if you look at enterprise websites. And, you know, one of the great examples in Romania, it's a nice company selling enterprise, Flowx.ai. They're very minimalist. You won't get to see, buy now, do this, and, you know, and so on. It's very minimalistic, they give you the benefits, don't get me wrong, right? They give you the benefits from the website, but they don't expect you that you go and click and buy and that's it, right? Right?
Okay.
So it's the language is more sophisticated, right? That's the difference between selling a SaaS, which, you know, you put a card, you get the instant benefit, or you get a free trial, and versus selling enterprise, where typically you have a lend and expand strategy, and you're getting into a pilot, which sometimes costs money too. And if that pilot goes well, you get into a larger pilot, and, you know, God knows when you get the full business.
Okay. Good. I will go directly to the last question, because I believe that this will be the longest podcast that I made for LaunchPod, and I'm very happy about it. And it's not, the discussion for me was very nice, and I felt some gaps that I had, and hopefully the audience the same. What is one thing that you see as a good thing in the Romanian founders?
I'm going to speak about the founders that I know. And I know a few of them from some nice companies in Romania that they're already well known on the marketplace. Man, they are super, super smart. And I think one of the problems that we probably have in Romania, and maybe it has to do with our education system, is the fact that, you know, we know so much from so many things, right? And that creates smart people, because you correlate a lot of things and you make connections. And by the way, making connections and being generalist and making connections is huge value these days, I guess, right? And that's the great value that I see in the founders in Romania, being extremely smart, being very knowledgeable in a lot of things. But at some point that becomes a drawback, that becomes a how do you call it? A stone, right? Because what I've seen for example, in the leaders in the US, I had a chance to work with leaders in the US in the Bay Area. They kind of employ people for many things and very quickly and I don't know, just you get a CMO, the second thing they do the very first day, they hire an agency to help them, right? Like right away, immediately. It's like they don't even, so they kind of get lots of consultants to work on doing whatever things. They do things 10 times more expensive, but 20 times faster. And that's something that I don't think we do yet. I've seen it once or twice in Romania, but very rarely, I would say.
I get what you're saying. Like I'm imagining the image in the back of the neighborhood when someone was repairing his Dacia and stitching it. Even he didn't had any experience in repairing cars, but he has a friend who knows a friend who will fix it. So this kind of mentality that doing everything alone because you don't believe that other will do it at the same grade and level that you do it, probably it's the drawback when you're scaling. Good. Thank you very much, Laurentiu. It was a pleasure.
Știu, e finalul podcastului și vreau să-ți mulțumesc că ai ajuns până aici. Și în același timp partenerilor BCR, Google, How2Web și Startup.ro. Iar până la următorul episod, ca să ai ce face, te așteptăm pe launch.ro să intri în comunitatea Launch Romania, unde găsești evenimente și inițiative loved by Launch. Bye!